David Beckham, Robert Downey Jr, Crown Prince of Bahrain. Not an average day in the life of a regional children's hospice, I can tell you, but it raised over £1 million.
All proceeds go toward funding Julia's House. This place is amazing.
The only times that celebrities have been paid for charities is where the charity has a big corporate sponsor and they want their pound of flesh and PR coverage, and it's embarrassing.
There's a lot of psychology involved. Budgets are often tight, so you've got to be quite creative. In your space, got to be quite sensitive.
I could give you a load of statistics. That's not interesting. It's not going to get you here. If you tell the story about how a family is falling apart under pressure, the sibling becoming a young carer, you're engaging with people in a much more effective way. 30 years ago, nobody was talking about dementia causes. Nobody was talking about mental health. Help for Heroes had a bit of a problem of, well, we've now got all this money flooding in, but we don't know how to spend it.
So hello, Martin, and welcome to Marketing the Madness. And also, welcome to our beautiful new podcast recording studio from Podcast Labs. Isn't this a great space?
Thank you, Katie. It's great. Yeah, and I'm glad to be the first guinea pig in the new studio as well.
Yeah, officially, guys, we are actually the first people to record in the studio. So today's podcast is going to look better, sound better, and be better in terms of the content than probably any other that you've ever heard.
We're going to smash it. We're going to set a high bar for everyone that follows.
Yes, the bar is here. So I am going to start, as I often do with my guests, learning a little bit more about you. Now, obviously, we've met previously, but for our lovely listeners and watchers of the podcast, can you give me a bit more of an insight into Martin, your career history and what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I originally worked in brand marketing for Procter & Gamble. In order to get some skills to go into the charity sector, I always wanted to be a charity worker. And then I've been a charity worker for the last 30 years or so. I worked for an overseas aid agency for a few years, including some time out in Ethiopia. And I work for a variety of UK charities, both ones that are very well known and ones that are very obscure, where you have to work really hard to get that awareness or traction with people. And for the last 18 years, I've been chief executive of Julia's House, the Dorset and now Wiltshire Children's Hospices. So we have 2 children's hospices in Dorset and Wiltshire, and we look after the children in their own homes as well as in the hospices. And it's grown hugely during that time. When I joined, we had 2 nurses. Now we've got 35 nurses. We have 160 families in our care now, whereas the first care of the first child only took place 20 years ago. So the scale of growth has been absolutely enormous. But we've managed to look after every child as an individual and to treat their siblings and their mums and dads as individuals with their own needs throughout that time, even though we're looking after many, many more now. And that's, I think, one of the things I'm most proud of. We're able to say that we know each child and each parent and know how to support them as individuals through all that they will face.
It's amazing what you do. I mean, I don't want to dumb down the amazingness that your charity, I guess, delivers for the families and the individuals that come to the hospice for care. And I think, if you guys haven't checked out Julia's House, please go and do so, because really, a lot of the events and the things that you guys get behind locally, I think are really, really good and make the charity quite an exciting, and you've done very well at faming the charity. Of course, this podcast is about marketing. So we're going to delve into how how your background in brand and marketing has helped you position and fame the charity in a really fantastic way. But the reality is what you do is, I guess, not change people's lives, but have a huge impact on people's, it's sad, right? What you guys do is very emotive. It's very sad. It's something that people care about because it's, children.
Well, people think a hospice is a building where people spend the last few days of their lives. And it can be, but it's a lot more than that, particularly in pediatric care, where a child's trajectory is much more unpredictable. So they could live 15 years with their condition, or 25 years with their condition, or they could live for 15 days. And if they live for several years with their life-shortening condition, our job is to help them make the most of every day and to fill every day with good memories and play and laughter. Children want to play even when they're really ill. And it's our job to help them to do that. So there are some tragic days in our work, of course there are, but there are many more happy days. And so we have this dilemma really when presenting the charity to the public, because there's this massive preconception that it's a building and it's only end-of-life care, but it's actually whole life care, and it's in the community as well, and it's support of the wider family. And it's fun and enjoyment as well as the really serious stuff at the end of life. So how do you present that? Do you go against the public perception and try to change that? Or do you tap into the great groundswell of empathy and support that is around end-of-life care? It's quite a dilemma, that. But it's a very wide range of care that we provide throughout the whole life of the child, and bereavement care for up to 5 years beyond for the family.
Yeah, like I said, the things that you guys do are amazing. I mean, I don't think I could do it, if I'm honest. I think I'd just be crying every day. Well, but it must be filled with fun as well, because like you say, it's children, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, I've worn a Cyberman helmet with the children. I've been on drumming sessions with the children.
Love
that. We've had water fights. There's lots of stuff that goes on. And I think it's good for people to see the boss, the chief executive, get down on the floor with the kids, because that's part of your job. It's not just to sit in an office, in the same way that it's part of my job to get out there and be the public face of the charity and take part in events and things like that, or to be on the shop floor of our shops. I'm doing a back to the floor a roadshow of all of our shops, spending time working in each one. You have to experience those things to be able to lead an organization properly. And so I've had my fair share of fun and games. I can remember when we actually held an 18th birthday for one of the girls in our care. Ebony, she's still with us as a young adult, and she's now a young ambassador for the charity, helping us to spread the word. But we held a birthday party for her when she left our care and moved into adult services. And she's in a wheelchair, and she said, "Martin, can I give you a hug?" So I got down on one knee to give her a hug. And she hugged me with one arm and dunked a huge pile of glitter over my head with the other. And I tell you, I was picking glitter out of various parts of me for days afterwards. But that's part of what we do, It's just important to see the world from the children's perspectives and to be in that world with them.
Yeah, totally. And I guess moving on to my next question, that transcends into how you guys position yourselves, or certainly in the amazing things that I see the charity getting involved with as someone who lives locally, who runs a business in the local area. For those of you that are listening that don't know where we are in the world, we're both, Martin and I, are in Bournemouth, Paul, Connovation.
Yeah.
Bournemouth, Paul and Christchurch we are now.
BCP.
Bournemouth, Christchurch and Paul.
Yes.
Bournemouth, Christchurch and Paul. And you guys have had a huge impact in the area. You've got some very famous ambassadors who sit behind the charity. But before we talk about that, because I know that's a huge part of your go-to-market strategy, talk to me about, I guess the principles that sit behind your marketing, and I guess how you've kind of come to that, because it feels, or it looks like to me, a lot of the things that you've spoken about in terms of, the human nature of the company, the fun nature of the charity that you are, comes through in your marketing. So how important has that been in setting your marketing strategy?
We've tried to position Julia's House, a children's hospice, as a happy place. And we want to project the reality, which is children smiling and playing and singing and having fun. So you'll see that in our imagery, whether it's in literature or in social media films, almost to the extent that I think we've underplayed the end-of-life care aspect of what we do, or the bereavement care. But one has to be much more sensitive about those areas because they're inherently private. But we really want to project the idea that a hospice is something which is about enhancing life and making the most of life. We don't talk about death much in this society. And if we do, we talk about it in hushed, reverent terms. We don't talk about a good death or making the most of all that is left of life. And that's what we try and do for the children. And of course, when we're projecting our image, we're not just projecting it to supporters, we're projecting it to parents who might be considering whether their child should come to Julia's House for regular stays, if they've got months or years of their life left, and not just wait until those last 9 or 10 days of their life, because there's so much that we can do for the family during that time. So we want to project an image of it's a lot more than you think. It's a lot more supportive and fun than you think. It's here to support you, the parents, and your siblings, and not just your ill child. So we're communicating to the potential service users as well as to our general public.
Yeah, you've got two audiences effectively,
Yes.
those that will need you and then those that will donate and help keep the charity running. And it's so hard. Like, I've, I guess, been lucky enough to, over my career, I can empathise a little bit with you because I've worked for large scale digital creative agencies and we've run, not campaigns, but we've worked with charities like Cancer Research, Action on Hearing Loss, or now the RNIB.
Yeah.
Like we've
RNID. Yes.
RNID.
Yeah.
We've also worked with the RNIB, which is why I'm getting confused.
Yeah.
So I understand a fair bit about that space. There's a lot of psychology involved. Budgets are often tight. So you've got to be quite creative in your marketing, which I think is going to be interesting for a lot of our listeners. But you've also, obviously, in your space, got to be quite sensitive. We've also done stuff actually for another local charity, the RNLI, who don't have the kind of emotional play, I guess, that you guys have. I've done a lot on things like how to get people to donate more and make using psychology, making it the donation equivalent to the thing that you might get, and using, I guess, psychology to push people to donate more, ideally. But it kind of feels a bit mean, like you're trying to, but you're not. You're doing it for a very good reason. Unlike maybe other people who are just trying to get you to buy their trainers for 20 quid more. At least we're really giving back and doing something ethical. What you guys do is amazing, and there's absolutely zero questioning that. So in terms of the tactical things that you've done as a charity to really deliver, let's just be really honest, because you do need money to run the business and make sure that the charity can afford to do the amazing things that it does. What have been the best marketing tactics or the actual things that you've done in terms of, I guess, delivering the donations?
Well, I think the first thing is to have a clear, simple, impactful brand. And so I can remember the debate when we first built and opened the hospice of what shall it be called? We knew it was Julia's house, but do we call it a hospice? Or is it a respite centre? Or is it a family support centre? Because it is so much more than people's perception of a hospice. But we decided to go with the word hospice because there was this huge public understanding of what that word meant as far as the public engaged with it. And we could try and build on that and try to explain the other services around that. But we had to go with that word. And a very simple, clean brand with a very simple strap line at that time was the Dorset Children's Hospice. It does what it says on the tin. You try and get that brand everywhere and try and project the imagery of that brand, which has a teddy bear and a heart in it. So you try and convey those things in all of your imagery. So you're projecting childhood, you're projecting fun, but you're also projecting compassion in everything that you do because of the elements of that brand. I think it starts from there, getting your story right. And then it's about working out who are you communicating to. Is it to everybody in the general public, or can you segment it down? So we know in charity work that the most generous supporters tend to be people over 50, people who've got more disposable income, and it goes up as they get to retirement. And ultimately, your most generous supporters are people who are not just engaging with events or giving regular donations, but they might go on to give you a large amount of money, for example, in a legacy when they pass away. We talk about a pyramid of giving. So at the base of the pyramid, you've got people engaging with your shops, which are also a very important way of telling people on the high street who you are and telling thousands of people what you do. And then in the middle of the pyramid, you've got people who come to events, which might cost quite a bit of money to engage with. And then you've got the big giving, the major donors, the patrons, the legacy givers. They don't have to be rich and famous people. They're just people with assets that they might give at some point in their life. But if you go out there with a message that's designed to appeal to everybody, I think you can end up appealing quite well to some people and not at all to other people.
Yeah, in fact, I was talking to a client about that earlier. You can't have one message. People talk about a value proposition or a go-to-market message. There is no one message that's going to speak to everyone. You've got to think about the different personas and the different people that you need to engage and resonate with, and how you're going to be able to resonate with them. I guess in general, in my world, in B2B marketing, that's more around the problems we can help them solve. In your world, that's slightly different. It's, how they can help other people, and how you can engage them to know that they can leave a mark in the world, or a mark on the world, and do something good and give something back.
And we're talking about something, children's palliative care, which thankfully is very, very rare. So
Yes.
Very few people will experience it with their child. Whereas in adult hospice care, most people in a community will know somebody who's been in that hospice. Or if you take Macmillan or cancer research, or Alzheimer's, for example, those kind of causes are speaking to huge audiences, because people have either experienced it themselves or one of their relatives have. So we rely much more on portraying the goodness and the compassion of what we do. And we know from general research into children's palliative care causes and why people give to them. They give because they have children of a similar kind of age, and so there's a resonance there, or grandchildren. And perhaps they're very grateful for the fact that they have healthy children. Some people give because they don't have children, because they have been right through their lives without having children, and yet there's a very strong emotional link to those that do have children who then become very sick. So there are different reasons why people give, but we can't rely on that universality of cancer, for example, which affects enormous numbers of people, which is why the Macmillans or the British Heart Foundations are the biggest brands that there are out there in the charity world.
Yeah, of course, because people can, a lot of this is around, and this goes for any kind of, I guess, human behavior, is because people can resonate with it. If it's something that you can resonate with, you're much more likely to engage with it. And like you say, luckily, not too many people are having to resonate with, the end of life care for their child or a child that they know. Let's hope anyway.
Yeah. Even then, there are fashions that come in and out of fashion in charity work. So 30 years ago, nobody was talking about dementia causes, and that became popularized 20 years ago, and the likes of the Alzheimer causes became very widely favored. Up to 15 years ago, nobody was talking about mental health in any workplace or in the general public. It just wasn't on the radar. It wasn't an NHS priority either. Now everybody, quite rightly, is talking about mental health. So the likes of Mind, for example, have become, justly so, very, very widely supported. And we're now talking about trying to prevent the deterioration into mental health in people, rather than rescue packages in a hospital when it's already much, very, very late into somebody's illness. So things do come in and out of fashion. A few years ago, Help for Heroes was a huge new entry into the market, if you like, to the extent that they got flooded with money and didn't quite have as much experience being a startup as the likes of the Royal British Legion, for example, which has been spending that money wisely on veterans programs for years, or Combat Stress is another one that's been around for years. And ultimately, Help for Heroes, I think, had a bit of a problem of, well, we've now got all this money flooding in because of the strength of our brand, very clear, simple, emotive brand, but we don't know how to spend it. And ultimately, they had some real dilemmas. And some of their programs, I think, now have been taken on by some of the more established military charities, because they have so much more experience of how to spend it. So you do sometimes get phases, fashions, and new entrants into that crowded market of charities.
Yeah, totally. And I think there's a lot for us in the world of marketing to learn from what you guys, as all of the charities do. And even just you talking then, it was making me think just how truly innovative the charity sector has to be, because you don't have necessarily the huge budgets that maybe some of the bigger brands that we're used to seeing have. You have to work harder. And I think what's brilliant about all the charities that I have worked with, and definitely something anyone working in marketing can learn from the charity sector, is the amount of different tactics and the different things that you do. Like you were talking earlier, we have shops and storefronts. We have, campaigns going out about celebrities. We have, celebrity endorsement. We have on the ground community events and things happening. We have, you guys I know at the moment, for instance, have got oh my gosh, I want to say, is it Grommet? It is Grommet, isn't it? Grommet dogs? No, you haven't got Grommet dogs.
Balloon dogs.
Do you know why I'm thinking Grommet dogs? Because in Bristol, they did have the Grommet dogs,
yes,
right?
I know what you mean, yeah.
But you've got balloon dogs.
Yes, we've got a public art trail with 50 balloon dog fiberglass sculptures, all painted in different colours and patterns by artists. That's been running in Swindon throughout the summer. And we decided to be the charity for that, which involves, spending quite a bit of money on promotion and engaging with the public and the business community, because we look after children in Swindon, but we weren't known as a charity in Swindon at all because we're relatively new. And suddenly 50 balloon dog sculptures, 6 foot high, in glorious Technicolor, appear on Swindon's high street, and everybody is talking about it. And we put a lot of promotional investment into making sure that all the media covered that event, and it was fun. And because they're balloon dogs, kids like the sculptures, so it's very family friendly. So yes, you do have to find different ways of going into the market with your message, and sometimes invest in completely new things where the payback from them may come years down the line, because you're trying to grow a new generation of supporters.
Yeah. How important then, I guess, is the different things in those marketing mix, or are they all equally important, i.e., PR, which potentially something like that leads to? Because at the end of the day, you need people to put their hands in the pocket and, donate. How important are the different tactics that you use in, I guess, getting to that end goal of actually people donating?
Well, I've always believed that a high level of PR pays for itself many times over. You depend on public awareness. If people are going to choose you as the beneficiary of their coffee morning or their big corporate events or something like that. Yesterday, I was at a beach volleyball tournament in Bournemouth, 23 companies taking part, organised by a company called MSP Capital, and lots of big names were there, and we were all having fun. I got drafted into one of the teams who were a player short, so I'm a little bit stiff today. But it was great, and that ultimately came, I think, from sowing lots of seeds of high public awareness. And it's worth investing in PR for its own sake, I think. But you've also got to ask yourself, do we put most of our resources into marketing to the people who are already on our supporter base, or to the unconverted out there? The short answer is you have to do both, but you're going to get much more of a swift return from marketing to your current supporters. It's a lot easier to get more out of an existing customer, if we call them that in a business term, than it is to generate a new customer. But you've also got to invest in your future customer, because over time, your existing customer base will decline. Either they move away, and we are a regional, geographically limited charity, or they pass away, or they fall in love with another cause or something. So you've got to expect an attrition rate, and therefore invest in new supporter acquisition.
It's so important. And I think you're talking about the kind of natural and normal marketing funnel there to a certain extent. You've got to have different tactics in order to support the entirety of the marketing funnel, from acquiring new supporters, in your case, to engaging and continually nurturing them to the point that you're obviously getting them to take action and donate. So I think whatever you're doing, whatever kind of business you are, you've got to have different tactics and different, whether you want to call them marketing tactics or sales tactics or business tactics, I guess doesn't make any difference. You've got to have things in your arsenal that are helping at every stage of that journey. And you've got to get the whole organization behind it. Now, you'll know this as a salesperson. If a business enlists a salesperson and says, you just sit in the corner and generate income for us, don't ask me for anything. I have been a solo fundraiser for an obscure charity with an almost unpronounceable name, the National Family and Parenting Institute, that nobody had heard of. And I don't think the organization at that stage really understood that you need the support of the whole organization to give that person information.
and systems and things that will help them to communicate with the general public. You'd also quite like the organisation to get behind you with their contacts of who knows who,
Yeah.
but particularly with up-to-date information about the services that you are there to communicate with. As a fundraiser, you are a communicator. That's your job. You're there to engage people, and you can't do that just sat alone trying to work out how to describe programs that you're not directly involved in. You've got to invest in these things. So I certainly have the scars on my back of having been a fundraiser with an organization that didn't really want a fundraiser. Sometimes they're described as a necessary evil in some charities, which is, apart from anything else, an awful way to motivate your fundraising staff. You have to welcome those people and invest in them, and ideally help them and show that you're doing it too.
Yeah, it's got to be in any business. It's got to be everyone's game. But I think certainly in the space that you're operating in, everyone. I mean, even to work there, you've got to be behind the cause, right? You've got to have a love and an empathy for the charity that you're working for, and that's something that I have. I guess noticed certainly when I'm working with charities is the love and the, I guess, connection that the employees have with the business, and therefore their willingness to get more involved, because you do really feel like you're making a difference.
Yes. And the people leading the organization have to make clear that everybody is totally interdependent. So you want, in our case, we have a nursing team. We want them to engage with and help the fundraisers as much as the fundraisers are there to generate the income. And your job is to help everybody to understand why we're all here, and that we've got different complementary skills, and to keep the wheels oiled, that make sure an organization is backing all of its people and clubbing together to make everybody's roles as easy as possible.
Yeah. What do you think, I guess, outside of your sector, so the marketing world can learn from charities and how you guys market yourselves? Well,
how to do things on a shoestring. I suppose. I mean, there are big national charities that spend enormous amounts on marketing, and even to the extent that they're producing. If you take Macmillan as an example, they produced a unique typeface, that sort of bubble green writing and the tone of the green, and whenever you see that anywhere, you think that's Macmillan, and they've invested a lot in that, and good luck to them, because it has made them very, very distinctive. But most charities are trying to do it on a shoestring, and also storytelling. I think it's important that people relate to people. They don't relate to statistics. I could give you a load of statistics about the types of people we're looking after, or the rarity of those illnesses, or the numbers of patients we have. That's not interesting. It's not going to get you here. Whereas if you tell the story about how a family is falling apart under pressure because mum or dad have not had a clear night's sleep for 5 years because of their child's round-the-clock care, and what that does to their relationship, or the sibling becoming a young carer at quite a young age because mum or dad needs help with the ill child, and unconsciously they're taking on a carer role age 6 or 7 for their younger sibling. If you tell that story, then suddenly you're engaging with people in a much more effective way. And it's also about communicating when you're in the room with people as well. It's not just sending marketing material out there into the ether. I feel that if, as a charity leader, you are part of the brand, and indeed you are, Katie Street, the brand, aren't you?
I guess to a certain extent,
this podcast and the way you project yourself, whether it's a photo of you twirling around in a festival, having fun in your time, that's all part of the brand, isn't it? And I think a charity leader is kind of part of that as well. So if I'm giving a speech to a room full of people, that's a real gift of an opportunity, because I can't often get those people in a room. Let's say it's a corporate gathering or a gathering of community groups, a bunch of Rotary groups or WI groups or something. And you have one chance to make a really golden impression with them. So make sure that you give them the best speech they have ever heard. That, I think, should be your goal as the spokesperson for your charity. And the short answer is that that never comes by accident. It comes from really good preparation and good performance as well. thinking of yourself as a stage actor, projecting with the same kind of emotion and technique that a stage actor does. And working out beforehand, not just what you're going to say, but how you're going to say it, where the real emotional points are, so that, as the saying goes, people won't remember what you say, but they will remember how you made them feel. And you need to go away having left people with the impression that was the best talk they've heard. It spoke to them in the heart. They remember the stories that you told. They're engaging with you on a totally different level from last month's speaker or the month before that, because all of those groups have had regular speakers come to them. You have to be the best there is.
It's interesting how the world has changed, and that human elephant. I feel like we should keep that in. That human element is so much more important than it probably has ever been because of social media. Let's be honest. That's what sits behind this, is we all have a platform that enables us to quite openly speak to our audience. And that's what I do. I talk about my business. I talk about marketing. I talk about, I don't know, the struggles that I have, that I know other business leaders that are in my space that are potentially my future clients are probably also facing. And I think that's, again, something that charities on the whole have done really well. Yes, of course, we've talked about using lots of different tactics to feed every stage of the journey, but also being really human and creating content that is actually going to get your audience to understand, empathize with you, and see you as a human. And that comes through in terms of, I guess, your marketing as a whole, but also is really important for the leaders and everyone in the business to position themselves. And I think that's been a real game changer. If I look at the charities, businesses that are growing at the moment, it's the one like you guys are doing a great job. You as the CEO, put yourself out there. You are present on LinkedIn continually. You're talking about the things that matter. You're sharing all of these stories. And I think businesses that forget to do that or don't want to do that or are resistant to doing that will end up suffering, because as humans, we all want to engage with or relate with humans. I was thinking about a LinkedIn post about this yesterday, about the importance of your own personal brand. And some people, I spoke to someone, not in this office, but in our old office, who was like, I don't want to relate my business to myself at all. I want to keep it totally separate because I just think that it's not a good idea. And I was like, I obviously have taken totally the opposite approach with my business. So of course I look at it very differently. And actually, if you look at the businesses that are doing well at the moment, you cannot ignore personal brand. This is the world that we're living in. TikTok megastars coming out of nowhere. There are people out there that run businesses that will grow their business better than yours if you don't put yourself forward.
Yeah. So if you take LinkedIn as an example, I'd only ever posted 2 messages about LinkedIn before the pandemic. I didn't really dabble in it. And then suddenly we were in lockdown and we couldn't meet people. You couldn't meet the corporate sector. And this is primarily a corporate sector platform. So I thought, this is where we've got to be. And I started posting. And you learn as you go along that what people respond to are quirkiness and character. So if you only put predictable messages in about what your services are, in our case, the care services, you're only going to engage with converted people. You're preaching to the converted. If you put things out with humor or with compassion, or if you talk about grief and bereavement, I've done that on LinkedIn as well, which is something that everybody can relate to because everybody has lost someone, even though mercifully only a very, very few people have lost a child. Then you're engaging with people on a whole different level. If you talk about subjects of much wider interest like leadership or mental health and how you interpret those, how they live and breathe in your workplace, then you're reaching out to much bigger audiences. And then when you've got something that you want to ask that audience, if you want to ask for their support for something, you've got a much, much bigger following. So I've learned through trial and error. I'm not technically gifted. I'm not of that social media generation, but I learned through trial and error how to create your own voice on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And I think it's more important than ever. I think it's going to blow up more than it even is today. I mean, gosh, there's so many platforms. There's so much that you can explore and that you can do. And I think that's another very good example of where charities, I guess, sometimes can be more agile than other larger businesses, is that you guys will just go out because, like you say, often you've got to work on a shoestring. It doesn't cost anything apart from your time to post on LinkedIn to a certain extent. So why not try it? Doing that, showing up, to me, is possibly one of the most important things. I know you're a runner and you like your exercise as well. We talk about exercise quite a bit.
Yeah.
The same rules apply. And I have, sorry, for anyone who has heard me say this before, but I'm going to keep saying it. When it comes to marketing, sales, donations, whatever it is, if you want people to take action, it's not going to happen overnight. You've got to keep showing up. You've got, like you say, you've got to pull that audience in, but then you've got to continually be there. You can't just disappear and hope that one LinkedIn post is going to save your business and produce all the sales. You've got to keep doing it week after week, day after day, hour after hour, however you want to look at it. And that, I think, is, again, you can see charities tend to work really, really hard, and they'll look at the options that they have that are going to, I guess, produce those results quicker.
Yes, and think of what interests the audience rather than what you think you need to tell them.
Oh, yes, please.
So, let's take challenges like running or something like that. If you say I'm doing a marathon this year, well, that's fine. That might be interesting. But 3 years ago, when Eddie Howe was manager of Bournemouth, he's one of our patrons. I challenged him to a fitness challenge. So we took part in a 2-hour insanity workout marathon, which for anybody that's done the insanity workout, which is a 30-minute hit and a hard one, 2 hours was quite a big challenge. But I knew that we could get much wider traction from that because of his celebrity, and that's showing his personal commitment to the charity. And other business people wanted to be part of that group, so we got a little group of people doing the sponsored activity, and suddenly it was snowballing like that. So whatever you do, how can you make sure that you're just spicing it up a bit? You're thinking of different ways to present what you do, and innovating all the time. And if you're doing a challenge that somebody's done before, what kind of target can you set yourself, and how can you film yourself training for that target and get those kind of things out there as well? I've put things out on LinkedIn of me breathless and looking like I'm near the end of my physical limits after the end of a workout. And then just about between breaths, getting in the sponsor challenge of what I'm doing. And that's going to be much more engaging than if you just put a photo out there and saying, oh, guess what? I'm doing this. Would you mind sponsoring me? So you've got to use the medium to its fullest potential.
Yeah, totally. And also, again, you didn't say this exactly, but create the types of tactics and content that represent you and your charity. And I think that fun element is still in there with the challenge that you set, Eddie. It's representative of who you guys are. So creating the kind of content, the kind of tactics that actually, feed back into who you are as a business, your values as a business, I think is also really important. Now, one other thing you've spoken about here, which I think is super interesting, is the importance of celebrity in marketing.
Yeah.
And I keep calling it marketing because I know it's not, you probably don't always frame it like that, but I am framing it like that. But you have done some amazing things with celebrities that have really helped your growth as a charity, your reach, your engagement, and of course, donations. Can you, I guess, delve into one that has been very successful and how it came about?
Yes. Well, one of our patrons who we managed to persuade to support the charity is Guy Ritchie, and at the time we had a dream of creating a second children's hospice. So we built up the first one in Dorset, and we looked at all of the surrounding counties, and we realised that Wiltshire was underserved in children's services. So we wanted to create the Wiltshire Children's Hospice, and Guy has a home on the Dorset-Wiltshire border. Perfect. And we managed to get to know him by inviting him to an event. And he spoke with some of the children and parents at that event and really fell in love with our cause. And over the course of 2 or 3 meetings with him after that event, I persuaded him to join our appeal to build fund and build the Wiltshire Children's Hospice. He staged an event in his back garden for 100 friends, including David Beckham and the Crown Prince of Bahrain. Not an average day in the life of a regional children's hospice, I can tell you, but it raised over £1 million. And one of the people there was Robert Downey Jr. Now, Guy had directed Robert in the 2 Sherlock Holmes movies, so they'd worked together twice. And Guy had spotted that there was this thing called Omaze, which is now quite well known. Omaze started out as a celebrity experience opportunity. So it's run as a social enterprise by a group of people in California. And it started out as a celebrity experience raffle idea, basically, where it's an online raffle with a massive marketing campaign behind it to a certain star's supporters or celebrities' supporters. So chance to meet so-and-so at such and such, $10 a ticket. That's the concept. And then they market that online primarily to that star's fan base through their own Facebook pages, for example. And Guy had spotted that George Clooney had done one of the very first Omaze campaigns. And he asked Robert if he would do one. And Robert Downey Jr. said yes, he would. So we raffled off through Omaze online, big marketing campaign around the world, chance to meet Robert on the red carpet of the world premiere of the Avengers Age of Ultron, the second Avengers movie. Little regional children's hospice in southwest England. You know, Robert didn't have a connection here, but you have to create stepping stones to people who can accelerate your campaigns. I call them accelerators. So if you don't know them personally, who does know them? Who has some leverage with them, and get to know those people? And it raised $2 million for us.
Wow, Martin.
And so Guy's event and Robert's online campaign had raised most of the money we needed to build the Wiltshire Children's Hospice, which we duly did, and we opened it a couple of years later. Omaze now has become about these £1 million house draws. You know, here's a draw for £1 million house in Cornwall, and here's one in Yorkshire, and they're a bit same old now. I think they've lost that originality that they had, and I think they started to lose it during the pandemic, when you couldn't meet the celebrity, could you? Because of lockdowns, because nobody was meeting, and then they went into these house draws, and I think they've lost their way a little bit there. But it was fresh and exciting for a while, and we were there very early on in that wave. So there we were. Robert Downey Jr. raised $2 million to build a new children's hospice. And after he'd done that, I wrote to Team Downey, as they're known. That's what they call themselves, Team Downey, his people. And I said, is there any chance we might possibly have some memorabilia, a piece of memorabilia from one of the Avengers movies that the children can enjoy seeing at the hospice? And a few weeks later, there arrived by special courier a replica Iron Man helmet. So we have an Iron Man helmet signed by Robert Downey Jr. in the lobby of our Wiltshire Children's Hospice as a permanent memento, something that the children see every day. But again,
it all maps back to things that children love that represent your charity. Like the Avengers. I mean, I love the Avengers, to be fair. I'm really into
I was a big fan.
Yeah, superhero
I'm definitely
stuff.
Marvel and not DC. Don't ask me about DC.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely non-you. You can only be one or the other, and I have to be Marvel, don't I?
Me too. And I think Marvel's more fun. They've just got a bit more, fun about them. There's no other way to explain it. Yeah. Can I be really mean? Because I like to ask mean questions.
Go on.
You don't have to ask. So, I mean, it must have been, you've talked us through the process that you got to, or that you went through in order to get to Robert Downey Jr. Did you have to pay him anything?
No.
Do you tend to have to pay celebrities?
In my career, I have only known the only times that celebrities have been paid for charities is where the charity has a big corporate sponsor and they want their pound of flesh in PR coverage and they pay celebrities to turn up to things. And that's up to them. That's not coming from the charity. That's coming from the corporate sponsor because they want the bang for their buck. I'm not comfortable with that.
No.
I think you should be able to get celebrities to do things for free for you. What you really want from a celebrity supporter is passionate engagement rather than I'm paid to be here and I'm kind of going through the motions. You know, I could tell you about some of those celebrities who turned up to those corporate dues and they barely know what cause they're talking about. Yeah. And it's embarrassing. It really is. You know, why did you come here? Well, we know why they came here. They came here for the paycheck. No, I've never done that at Julia's House. We have always only ever had free celebrity engagement. If I tell you that one of our patrons is Martin Clunes, for example, he lives in Dorset. He's very engaged in the local community, supports 2 or 3 charities extensively in Dorset, as well as some national ones. And he's not only done some of the high-profile stuff, like big events, he's also met many of the families over the years. He has developed a great knowledge of what we do. He's even met families at their own request when their child has been extremely ill and has come in to meet that child or meet the parents or the siblings, just to try and brighten their day. And those sort of things were not publicized at the time because they were private and discreet. But so they just go on quietly behind the scenes. And your celebrities who really care will do those kind of things too.
It feels a lot more authentic, and I'm so glad that, because I'd never really thought about the process of how you get there, but it must be hard to get to them in the first place. Like you say, you want it to be authentic. You want them to love and care about the charity. So it's almost like a marketing campaign in itself, like reaching them and understanding the celebrities that are here in the first place, because there's got to be some, you've got to pull them in, I guess, to a certain extent.
There's an iron law of celebrity charity support, which is the more famous they are, the less available they are, and the more charities want to be their best friend.
Yeah, exactly.
So they are the hardest ones to get to.
Yeah. So how do you get to them?
It takes a lot of skill and experience to build relationships with people who know them, if you don't have a direct route to them.
Yeah.
And it's about engaging and enthusing those people, and then persuading them to use their leverage to try and get that person to come to something, and then show them the real cause. So that event I was mentioning, which took place at 10 Downing Street, was hosted by Samantha Cameron when David Cameron was Prime Minister. And as you may recall, they had a very, very severely ill child, Ivan, who subsequently died. So the Camerons had an interest in, a personal stake in severely ill children and those causes. So Samantha Cameron hosted a reception which Guy came along to. I didn't actually meet Guy at that reception because I'm the man in the suit, right? I felt it was more important that he spent that time speaking with the children and the families to really understand what we're about. So, know when to take a step back as well, and just let the people who benefit from your cause speak for themselves.
Yeah. Martin, thank you. I have learnt so much from you today. One, about the world of charity that maybe I didn't know about, but also got some really great takeaways. If I've got some, I know our lovely listeners will have as well, about how we can learn from the charity sector and implement some of the amazing things that you guys do in our own marketing strategies, and hopefully get you some charity supporters for the amazing charity that you are. So a big thank you.
Thank you very much.
Before I let you go, I have one final question.
Yes.
And hopefully you're going to mention a really hot, sexy celebrity. That isn't the case, by the way. But anyway, so if you were to oh my God, Katie, put your teeth back in. If you were to recommend a guest or someone for me to talk to on the podcast that might unveil, because this is all about uncovering the innovations in marketing and the things that people could do a bit differently. Is there anyone that comes to mind that you think I should invite on as a guest, or that you could introduce me to?
People that I know, you mean?
Well, it doesn't have to be someone that you know, someone that because I can just go and attack them on LinkedIn probably, but someone that you would love to hear from, or that you respect, or that you have learned from in the world of marketing.
Do you mean a celebrity?
Could be anyone. Could be a friend, could be someone that you follow on LinkedIn, could be anything.
I'd want to know about Stephen Bartlett's incredibly steep rise. He's still in his 20s, isn't he?
I know. I think he might be 30 now. Is he like 29?
Yeah, the number one podcaster, is on all of the platforms. How did he get there so quickly? I think he would be a really interesting person to talk to. And what are his passions, and what causes does he like to give back to? I think that would be really interesting. How does he use that celebritydom? How does he use that currency that he now has to invest in the causes that he cares about most? Not just how does a successful person get there, but do they have an altruistic plan when they've got there? Because you're suddenly then in a position to be able to sprinkle some gold dust on the causes that you really care about. I think he would be really interesting. And I think it would be also interesting to hear from, you probably wouldn't ever get them, but a member of the royal family as well. Because the royals do a great deal for charity. I've done lots of royal events with different members of the royal family, particularly with Princess Anne when I worked for Save the Children. And she was incredibly serious and knowledgeable about the charity. She's been president for 50 years. 50 years. Just think about that, all the countries she's visited where the charity has programs. And I know as a charity person that if you get a royal to your event, you can basically double the ticket price, and because people want to be in a room with them. You have to have the right royal who is engaged with your cause, who has a synonym with your cause. But if you can get that marriage right, they're great.
I love this. And yeah, I'll work on the royals one. I've got a plan for that. Fab. Martin, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Katie.